I was just 3 years old when my family was finally allowed to leave the Soviet Union to seek a life of dignity and freedom here in Australia. My family had lived in those lands, the Soviet Union and Tsarist Russia before it, for as many generations as we can trace. Yet to be a Jew in those parts was to live a life of peril and fear. Exclusion from universities and professions, periodic outbursts of mob violence that saw entire communities disappear, Nazi killing squads roaming the land, hunting Jews, aided by the locals who pointed out the hiding places. I never personally experienced the exclusion, the mockery, and fear that was the daily diet of the Soviet Jew. I was spared that trauma. But I was raised on the stories of my parents and of my grandparents. And these stories affected me profoundly. They penetrated my consciousness and shaped it. They were my inheritance, my souvenir from a life that I can scarcely imagine. My father's accounts of life there remain most vivid in my mind. He taught maths and physics at his local high school and was adored and respected by his students. And then one day, a rumor began to circulate that he, their beloved mentor, was in fact a Jew. His students filed into his office one by one in disbelief and to offer their condolences. How could this be, one of them said? You're such a good person. When my father was a boy growing up in a town outside Kharkiv in Ukraine, ever an inquisitive lad, he asked one of the old matriarchs in the town where he lived, "Auntie, why do we call this area here a ravine? It is, after all, completely flat." "Ah, my boy," she answered proudly, "it was a ravine until we filled it with Jews." After finishing his schooling with flawless grades, my father applied to the university where he dreamed of one day lecturing in maths and physics. And the registrar looked over his grades and then at his identity card with the word Jew emblazoned upon it. And she said to him, "Look, son, you're clearly very bright, I can see from your grades. We've already filled our quota of Jews. To do yourself a favor, go over the road to the college where they're still accepting Jews and become a school teacher, because you will never get to this university." Moving to Australia, my family never fully left these experiences behind. The trauma was too deep and generational. I observed it in them. The rising dread, the tendency to experience joy only while waiting for the next disaster, and the fear that seemed to forever lurk in the eyes. Hatred tends to come with a lash. It hits you when you least expect it. If I ever allowed myself to believe that we had left it all behind, that anti-Semitism, the hatred of the Jewish people, was the stuff of Europe and the Middle East, of old books and museums, it would rise up to shake me from my illusions. It would switch on like a light bulb. When I was a boy of 12 or 13, my parents bought their first home, a little piece of Australia that was now ours, the happy beginnings of a new life of promise and plenty. It was an old first-floor apartment, a block from the hospital in Randwick, about 20 minutes from here. And directly above from us lived a man who'd been a migrant from Austria. He was probably in his 60s then, but still vigorous with a farmer's build. When we moved in, he first met my father, who has fair skin and blue eyes. The neighbor was welcoming and genial to a fault, offered to lend my father any power tools he might need in settling in. Then he met my mother, with her more obvious Jewish features, and everything changed. From that day, he would stand on his balcony night after night and bellow at us, alternating between a thunderous guttural roar tone full of menace. "Hitler didn't finish the job, I will finish it for him." He would pound on our door with his fists, taunt us, threaten us, cut open our wounds, and reveal our trauma. The police were called night after night, but did nothing. They're merely words, we were told. Nothing could be done. They wanted to see him act on his threats before intervening. We eventually sold the apartment at a loss and moved away, but he stayed with me. His name stayed with me. His voice stayed with me. I would play it out in my mind over and over and ponder the question, why did he hate us so? What did he think we had done? What did he think we intended to do beyond living simple, honest lives as hopeful migrants in a new land? He surely would have had no coherent answer to these questions. He probably didn't ponder on them a great deal. But he knew with perfect certainty that the Jew, represented in that moment by my parents and their two boys, was something so loathsome, so repugnant, so unhuman, was justified in threatening repeatedly to kill a young family. At times, I would see him chatting breezily with neighbours. He was the sort of guy who would receive a local award or join a neighbourhood watch, a fine, upstanding family man in every stride of his life. But when placed in close proximity to a family of Jews, he became an animal. Anti-Semitism is an extraordinary condition. It is a defect in human reasoning turned outward. Unique among hatreds in very many ways, it views its target as both inferior and cunningly superior. It shifts from a mere prejudice to a megalomaniacal quest that has consumed entire countries and continents. It has a remarkable tenacity and durability that sees it latch on to whatever the Jews hold dear and however they choose to define themselves. For one person, it is our monotheistic faith that is so abhorrent. Our refusal to abandon our traditions and take on the religions that sprung from ours, Christianity and Islam. For another, it is our designation as a people, a community, even a race. They view us as having undesirable features, physical and behavioral characteristics that cannot be changed through assimilation or conversion. For others still, our nation state is the embodiment of evil, the impediment to a better world. Each target is attacked with equal ferocity because in each case, the real target is the Jew. Yet it is not the flesh and blood Jew that is so hated, rather the mythical Jew, the beast the anti-Semite conjures just to have something to slay. The scheming Jew, the conspiring Jew, the all-powerful Jew, the vengeful Jew, the bloodthirsty Jew, the superior Jew, the capitalist Jew, the communist Jew, the moneyed Jew, the filthy Jew. After every shooting in the synagogue or other act of senseless rage at home or abroad directed at my people, I'm often asked to comment on the incident. I'm always posed the same question. Why? Why are the Jews so hated? This people that live as loyal citizens in every country, have a rich tradition of civil participation, charity, enterprise. Why are such things inflicted upon them? Why are they still shot at, beaten in their streets, their tombstones smashed and daubed with the insignia of those who tried to wipe us from the earth? Why? Jean-Paul Sartre theorized that the Jew became the symbol of modernity, of human progress and change, and therefore a convenient symbol upon which to lay all the ills and misfortunes of our societies and our own lives. The novelist Philip Roth thought it all began with The Merchant of Venice, and the very first words that Shakespeare put on the lips of Shylock, 3,000 ducats, a reference to the currency of Venice. According to Roth, the association with the evils of greed and vengefulness was forever forged. Another common explanation is that it's a jealousy arising from perceived success, and we hear much of Jewish contributions to the sciences and the arts. 23% of Nobel Prize winners are Jewish, despite making up just 0.125% of the world's population. But none of these explanations are satisfying or complete. The Jew may have been the great reformer, but our religion brought forth the other great faiths and the ethics and morals that guide Western civilization. Should this not be a cause of admiration? Yes, Shakespeare depicted a perfect Jewish archetype, but he also imbued him with great reasoning and the most memorable and compelling lines and passages of the play. And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? Besides, depictions of Jewish bloodthirstiness precede The Merchant of Venice. Chaucer's The Prioress's Tale comes to mind. And yes, Jews are seen as a successful people, but success does not of itself arouse hatred. We admire those we consider deserving of success. We only despise those we consider undeserving. I have my own explanations, which time will not permit me to offer, but it doesn't really matter anyway, because somewhere along the way, a long time ago, anti-Semitism left the realm of the rational, and therefore it evades rational explanation. What matters is that it is real and it is present. The story I've told you from my childhood, my light bulb moment, was a frankly terrifying period of my life. It was difficult to sleep beneath such a man, and it pained me to see the fear return full bore to my parents' eyes. But I now realize it was also one of the most important. I now know that I needed that moment. It set me on my course, allowed me to fill my life with purpose and meaning. It led me to write and advocate against anti-Semitism. And it taught me that hatred can never be outrun, it must be confronted.